Well, we're fortunate to have Linda with us, and she would lovely like to bring us up to date.
Yes, I would like to. Tom sends his love to all of you, and maybe by next week he'll be coming. I'm hoping. I think he will. As you know, he had a stroke, and I never knew what a stroke was until I saw the physical experience that he went through. And the way I would describe it is it seems to prevent your normal physical actions from doing what you would normally think they should be doing. You don't have the same kind of control initially, is what I noticed. And like walking is very difficult. Things that you just take for granted, that your mind is doing very normally. With a stroke, everything, it was like an electrocution of the, what would you call it, the mind, all the veins and nerves and all that kind of stuff. And it's all coming back, and he's doing well, and he's walking around now, with limited amounts.
With a cane?
Yeah, he is, and he can talk and read and everything fine. Initially, he couldn't do that. It was such an extremely different experience. I mean, no one expects to have a stroke or to be with someone who's having a stroke. And so, when he started having some sort of a problem, I can't remember everything that happened, but basically, I knew we had to get him to the hospital, so we called, it was Carol and Mike, wasn't it? My sister and brother-in-law who live close by. And they rushed us up to Jefferson Hospital, and this was probably about 11 o'clock at night, I would think.
Yeah, actually, didn't they call the paramedics?
Yeah, did we call the paramedics? Did they come?
Yeah, because they were there when I came over.
Okay. So they took him up, and then we followed, I think, is what happened. Everything's sort of a bit of a blur that night.
Yeah.
And when they took him in, I was with him all that time, and then the nurses and the doctors took a look at him, and they said, "Oh, this looks like a stroke. We're going to have to medevac him to Seattle to, what's that? Swedish hospital, which specializes in strokes." So at like around midnight, they flew him in a helicopter kind of a thing, I think it was, over to the Swedish hospital and put him up there. So he was there for about a week and a half, I think. And it's kind of a sterile place. I think is the best I can say. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it, but it's so as soon as he could, as he was able to get up and start walking a little bit with help, we moved him to a wonderful place. If any of you ever need any such help, there is a place called Mary and Martha, and it's in Paulsbo, and it is a, what would you call it? Rehab place. The people there are the sweetest people on the planet. They're mostly Latino people, and they are just wonderful. And the whole environment is just loving. And it felt like just going from hell to heaven in a way, So they were very helpful. They would get him up walking and doing everything. And little bit by bit, he's doing fine. He can walk now. I wouldn't say any great distances, but he has control of most of his body functions, and I would say all of them to some degree. His mind is as clear as ever, and it did not affect his mind, thank goodness. And I wouldn't be surprised if he would be here next week. I really wouldn't. So he sends his love to all of you and thanks you for all the loving thoughts that you may have sent to him. I know that he felt that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you with us.
I knew I could stay home because one of our sons came from Chicago to stay for a week with us, and I could stay home with him, and I thought, I really miss the group. So I said, all right, I'm just going to
We're glad that the maintenance still works.
And he'll be there when I get home today, so that'll be good.
Well, thank you.
Thank all of you. I could just feel your loving thoughts for Tom, and I thank each of you for that.
They were for you too.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Very appreciated. So, on with...
So, does anyone else have anything they'd like to share before we get into the topic for today? I don't think I've prepared a long enough deal.
Well, I'm going to share a funny story, which I already shared with you, Nicole. But I've been taking this course at uni, and it's called The Map, and we're using cards, and every day I do a card. And it's interesting how they're just right on, you know. So anyway, something came up in class, and so I shared a story. I shared a story about the white butterfly, and anyway, at the end of the class, this lady came over and she kneeled down next to me, and I had just met her. She was a nurse in another state. I don't know where she lived, but anyway, they just moved here to Port Townsend. And she said to me, would you be interested in being an empath? And for the celebration of lights at the Unity Church in December. And I looked at her and I said, well, first of all, I don't know what an empath is. You know. So she said, well, you would just hold someone's hand and you would know energies and this kind of a thing. And she went on and I said, well, it sounds very interesting, but I'll have to give it some thought. Well, there's a class starting tomorrow on an empath at the Unity Church. So I'm going to go take that course and find out what an empath is.
Well, it's even titled, What Does It Mean to Be an Empath? It's the exact title of the course.
I empath.
EM.
Yeah, like empathy. But
Empathy,
empath.
thank you.
Yeah.
Not exactly the same as
Empath.
empathy, it's different. I mean, an empath is different than that, but that's in there too.
Okay.
Yeah.
It has to do with energies and feeling.
Empaths just really typically have a thin skin when it comes to, they can really pick up on other people's emotional states and energies and feel things that, you know, I empath in a lot of different ways. So there's a lot of different kinds of empaths. Some people are more predominantly
one way
picking up on physical things, and other people it's all emotional, and other people they just feel energy, or there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ways of
Anyway.
it, but she must have saw you as a very sensitive person.
Yeah, I guess so.
Sensitive, open person is all I can guess. Yeah. Because you are.
Yeah.
It's
So-
our Teddy.
Huh?
It's our Teddy.
That's our tip. So anyway, I'm going to take that course tomorrow. Good.
Good.
Well,
Well,
see
and
where it goes.
with your background in the course, I think you've got a base that's solid enough so
think
that
so.
you won't be emphasizing a victimhood situation by being so much in tune with it that you magnify it. That you'll know when to step back and ask for that internal guidance,
Right.
so that you'll know when that what should be said and felt, and what would help that person move toward a reality of himself or herself, rather than a wallowing in something to have someone there with them wallowing together type of thing.
Well, I know I do with my granddaughters, and I do with my friends. And so,
Well, you've got the background. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You've been in groups. You've led groups, so
Yeah.
so that you should have.
but it was funny because I never
That
had
built in.
thought about anything like that, and then here the classes Wednesday.
Good. That should be fun.
Hey, I can ask you one question. Did you see Kathy Fowler?
Did I see her? I did not see her.
Okay.
I saw the emails the Facebook that she sent out.
Is she back?
No.
Oh,
She was visiting her son and daughter-in-law with a gentleman
Okay.
that she's been seeing.
Okay.
But no,
just thought maybe she
I didn't hear from her.
Because she had a stroke, I think.
Yeah. She looks good.
She looks good.
She looks thin in the pictures.
She was always thin, but she does look a little thinner.
Yeah.
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 Anyone else?
I may have to leave a little early. I've been waiting all day for Wave Cable to come and restore my internet.
Oh.
Serious.
I saw two things on the way here. We're driving by and I saw a sign that said Miracle Ear. I thought, okay, I'll try to keep this. And then in big, bold, white letters on the back of a truck, I don't know what it was, if it was a plumbing truck, that would sort of make sense. And it just says, as if it never happened.
You want to take care of the meeting today?
That's the segue, Tom?
Yeah, that sounds like a segue unless someone has something else.
Sam called me and asked me to let everybody know that he couldn't make it today. He's doing fine, but he's at his grandson's birthday.
Okay. We understand the importance of those kind of things.
Yeah, we were just
Even
at
though they
ours.
never happened.
For grandsons it does, for grandparents it doesn't.
If anything keeps me in here, in the world still, it's those grandkids. They're just pure love to me. But it keeps you tied to a form. And I realize that. But I still wouldn't want to give up those 8 grandkids.
Well, I don't think we have to. I think what we're being asked to do is to step away from our impression of what we think they are, even if it is very loving. That goes with us. But to allow them to be everything instead of something limited. And I think that's where we're headed. The topic I wrote down here is our purpose in creation and in time. I'm going to cover every bit of that, every question you've ever had about it.
What are we going to do with the rest of the time?
I don't know.
We could tell
You already
jokes.
have the answer. You saw it on the back of the truck, the answer.
Oh, yeah.
Don't get to the end before I do. So last week we talked about our special function, and obviously the special function we have, all of us, is to ask for help to forgive everything we seem to perceive. So that overlaps with our purpose, and it could be considered to be our main purpose now. But I want to go into a little bit more as to the nuts and bolts of it from one aspect, and from another aspect, what is an idea of creation? What does the Course tell us about creation? The Course really explains that we can't understand creation from the dream, because creation is extended in wholeness, and we think we're not whole. But it shows us some reflections of that, things we can look for in this forgiveness process, and takes us through the idea. What I keep going back to the prodigal son, and with the idea of purpose, that there was a purpose for this prodigal journey that we're all on. That it wasn't purposeless. And from my personal standpoint, if it was without a purpose, then it means it's arbitrary, and God is arbitrary, and even the Son of God is arbitrary and capricious, and it could happen again. And I think it will happen again because it's happening constantly, but not to us. So from my standpoint, our perspective, our beingness, you can call it our soul if you'd like, moves through this process, which is basically an evolutionary process of the prodigal son. From the idea of separation as just a simple lark to taking it seriously, to the tiny mad idea when the son forgot to laugh, to now what? And with the amnesia built into the game, here we are. Now, is there no more purpose than to get back? In other words, is that it? So forgiveness will get me back, and that's the only purpose. Well, what's gained then? What do we have from that?
The experience.
Experience is the word, and it goes to that a lot. And I'm probably going to have a whole different meeting on experience, but that's the key to experience. What are we experiencing? Well, separation. So then what are we determining? Which do you want? Well, it seems unfair because we can't remember what we had. The problem apparently was what we had was all we had, so we had nothing to compare it to. In other words, it's the candle in the sun. I am the sun. I am the light. I am the light. But wait a minute, everyone's the light. Everyone's the light. What does it mean? Inevitably, as God created minds, they would have to ask that question. Is there something other than the light? And I believe we're here to experience that. And that's the prodigal journey. By the time we go back, what's the story of the son? He understands the value of what he had. He did not understand the value of what he had. And the one that stayed there doesn't understand the value of the prodigal journey. And so there's an interesting, someone else who channeled, you've heard of Paul Farini?
Oh, yeah.
He had an interesting tape that I listened to years ago where he posited that the Son of God cannot create until he takes the prodigal journey. Now, the Course puts it another way. And that makes sense to me because how do you know what's valuable in creation if you don't understand what you're missing when you try to go outside of something that's all-inclusive? In other words, you can't create until you know the full spectrum of creation. And that includes, that's going back to the introduction to the Course. It says it doesn't mean to try to explain the meaning of love because that is beyond what can be put into words, basically. And it says, but the opposite of love is fear. But that which is all-encompassing can have no opposite. In other words, if God is everything, God of everything encompasses the illusion as well. The distinction is knowing what is illusion and what is real. And as near as I can put words to it, that knowing is either you recognize in another the allness of God, of all that is, or it's an illusion. Every living thing, another way I look at it, is a portal to every living thing. What we're basically trying to do on a prodigal journey is to realize we don't want the journey anymore. And to say there must be a better way. and to start to have a feeling within us that knows there is a better way, that knows it's available, that has had enough experience with trying to do it on my own versus trying to ask for help, to be reinforced with my little willingness to say, if I look back on it, at times when I thought I was asking for help and I didn't get help, I still wanted to do it on my own. I wanted to do it my way. It's always been there. So little by little, we're getting more and more trust and faith that it's going to happen. And we start understanding the inevitability of it. But my whole purpose of this meeting is to say that this is a process that the Son of God goes through. I don't know necessarily that every creation of God needs to take the prodigal journey. I don't know if I buy into that 100%, because experience is shared. It'd be like saying we would have to take everyone's journey. It's all brought together in the Holy Spirit, which is in all of us. And it's the same Holy Spirit in all of us. And when the Course says, you are the same as your brother, that's the connection to everything that is the same in every one. And that's the connection we're going to. And we will be leaving these personalities behind. But we will be taking with us every loving thought we've ever had, and every loving thought anyone has ever had about us. And what else would we want to keep? And that includes our children and our grandchildren and our friends and our meetings that develop identities. It's like every time this group meets, it has its own identity. And that becomes a joining. It becomes something that we can feel. Laurel felt it. She called upon it. She felt it. And each meeting does have that. But every meeting with everyone has that potential and that reality behind the facade of bodies. So anyway, any questions before we start here?
A couple of comments. Edgar Casey said that every group had its own group consciousness. So this group has its own group consciousness. Port Ludlow as a whole has its own, and so on. But what I was reminded of when you were talking is I think it's from Conversations with God, where if there's only one, then that one really doesn't know what it is until it experiences what it is not. And it seems to me that that's the journey of the prodigal son that you're talking about.
It is.
Yeah. And I think the quote from the Course is, in the absence of what is not, what is not.
And that's actually from Neil Donald Walsh. That's not from the Course.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But that has stuck with me as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say it again, Brian.
In the absence of what is not, what is not. It's from Conversations with God. Did I say it was from the Course?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's from you're right. It's Walsh.
Okay.
It seems like just by default, just incarnating is a prodigal journey.
Absolutely.
Even if you wake up right away, from the time you're a kid, and still there's that coming in, and where the hell am I?
Well,
what's going on?
I'm going to
and
temper that a little bit with the idea that once we are, that's part of the evolutionary process, where we will get to a point where we can make a body and not get stuck in it.
And not what?
Not get stuck in it.
Oh, yeah.
We know the body is a tool that we use to serve a function that we have chosen for the specific situation. And I mean, isn't that what
I can totally imagine that.
Isn't that what
Yeah.
masters do?
That's what Jesus
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
That's what Sai Baba did before
Yeah.
he left. He could bilocate and trilocate.
Yeah.
So we don't have to get stuck in what we think we're stuck in.
A lot of those Hindu saints had the ability to do that. Yogananda's guru did it. I've read about several others.
Papaji one time there was some big festival, and he made a commitment to, and there's always a feast, and so he made a commitment to 3 of his devotees that he was going to attend their feast with their family. And then after the festival, the 3 devotees were together talking about how great it was to have Papaji there and the amount of food he ate.
Oh, that's great. In the book, Jesus, My Autobiography, which I just love, he's talking about when they saw him walk on water. He said, I wasn't walking on water. I was meditating in a cave nearby, and I projected myself out a few inches above the water, and they saw me standing there and thought I was walking on water.
And another way to look at that is, even if he had walked on the water, it was still a projection of his body walking on water.
Yeah.
Voila! Here we are.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because there's a tendency to think that awakened people are in their body. It's just the unawakened ones who don't know they're in their body. But if there's form, that's the only reason for form really is to communicate. We couldn't communicate, or at least I don't think we could, just, okay, did you get that message? You know, I just said something to you. No, we can't do that yet. So we need the body to communicate.
For a while.
We believe we do.
Yeah.
And that thought that you just had right there is
we do, yeah.
there's our obstacle right there.
If you read people who've had near-death experiences, they say they do communicate mentally, and it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about
Everybody's had the experience.
let's go. I want to make it clear that my understanding of this is a process, and it goes from talking about Christ creating really the world and man and mankind, and then all the words about man pretty much were taken out by the time that Wapnick and Helen got to the end. But the whole thing is a progression for in my mind, for the authors of this course itself, that they are taking themselves through this as they take all of us. In other words, there's a projection of the masters moving to allow everyone else to be masters so that they have this equality that the Course talks about. And that their own teaching is what's helping them to attain the level of oneness. But let's go to early in the Course on text on page 19. Oh, sorry. Let's see, Scott. It would be in
I've
chapter.
got the regular book.
Oh, good. All right. So let's start with Patty here doing at the very bottom of 19 on paragraph 4. We're just going to do about 3 paragraphs here.
Okay. So the chapter is the separation and the atonement. And then this section is the atonement as defense. Okay. So the atonement is the only defense that cannot be used destructively because it is not a device you made. The atonement principle was in effect long before the atonement began. The principle was love, and the atonement was an act of love. Acts were not necessary before the separation because belief in space and time did not exist. It was only after the separation that the atonement and the conditions necessary for its fulfillment were planned. Then a defense so splendid was needed that it could not be misused, although it could be refused. Refusal could not, however, turn it into a weapon of attack, which is the inherent characteristic of other defenses. The atonement thus becomes the only defense that is not a two-edged sword. It can only heal.
So I just want to point out a couple things here. It's that the atonement principle was in effect long before the atonement began. So let's look at this from the prodigal son perspective. So long before the prodigal son decided to take the journey of separation, the principle was there. But then you go into the paragraph a little further and it says, it was only after the separation that the atonement and the conditions necessary for its fulfillment were planned. So let's take this from the idea of a game. The game of separation already had the principle of reunification available, but the particular game of separation had to be planned for with its own special atonement plan after the separation. In other words, after the son declared, I want to be separate, then the principle was there, but it was customized.
Once left Garden of Eden, then the plan came into effect.
Well, it depends on where you want to go within the whole program, but from my perspective, it was the Big Bang itself.
Well, yeah, wherever it started.
And then you have the mini ones within it. And I'm glad you brought it up that way, because that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about masters that have to teach so they can go beyond what they're teaching. Because this is about a little game on Earth over a space-time that didn't exist until the game started, the parameters of the game. And so these are the masters of the game that are saying, you know what, I figured the game out, except I can't advance out of it myself unless I have everybody else, or I help everybody else. Which of course tells us over and over, we can't leave by ourselves. Brian, did you want to do two?
Do you know what I think that means,
Yeah.
Tom?
Right.
Another way of interpreting that last sentence, that you can't leave unless you can see everybody else as part of yourself. We can do that now to some degree, to increasing degrees, and then I would think our experience would unfold gently as we were willing to do that. I don't think we have to master it for us to have the whole or have a great experience.
I agree with you 100%, and thank you for bringing that up, because what it's saying about the masters of the game is they're still in the game.
Yes.
And what you're saying, I think, if I'm hearing it, Linda, is that we have the choice not to be in it at all.
Yes, that's right.
And that's where we're going toward the end of this. And what did you say was on the plumber's truck, Nicole?
As if it never happened.
As if it never
Right.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
That's where we're going.
Yes. Yeah, good connection.
So the only question is, was there a purpose for the game in the first place? And that goes back to valuing and what we value and how we see every other aspect. How the candle in the sun didn't appreciate the other candles in the sun. But when you are the prodigal son and you come back, you know everyone that where you are then has been on the journey. And everyone values it. You value everyone. And everyone is the entirety of God. It's where we're trying to get to. Stop valuing this because there's something more. But in the process of this, in the evolution of this, learn what is valuable within this and what isn't.
Love.
There's a statement.
That's it in a word. Love.
Love, right. There's another statement in the Course that I always love, and What could you not accept if you but knew?
Right?
All things past, present, and to come are gently planned for your good. That is such a difficult thing to swallow sometimes,
Yeah.
but very comforting,
It is.
I think.
Well, let's go with the next paragraph, Brian.
The atonement was built into the space-time belief to set a limit on the need for the belief itself, and ultimately to make learning complete. The atonement is the final lesson. Learning itself, like the classrooms in which it occurs, is temporary. The ability to learn has no value when change is no longer necessary. The eternally creative have nothing to learn. You can learn to improve your perceptions and become a better and better learner. This will bring you into closer and closer accord with the sonship. But the sonship itself is a perfect creation, and perfection is not a matter of degree. Only while there is a belief in differences is learning meaningful.
So one aspect of perfection, among all the aspects of perfection, but not really understanding what perfection is, because not understanding what imperfection is. Sally?
Evolution is a process in which you seem to proceed from one degree to the next. You correct your previous missteps by stepping forward. This process is actually incomprehensible in temporal terms because you return as you go forward. The atonement is the device by which you can free yourself from the past as you go ahead. It undoes your past errors, thus making it unnecessary for you to keep retracing your steps without advancing to your return. In this sense, the atonement saves time, but like the miracle it serves, does not establish it. Abolish it, I'm sorry. Does not abolish it. As long as there is need for atonement, there is need for time. But the atonement as a completed plan has a unique relationship to time. Until the atonement is complete, its various phases will proceed in time. But the whole atonement stands at time's end. At that point, the bridge of return has been built.
And where does this evolutionary process take place?
In the mind.
In the mind.
Yeah.
In the mind.
Yeah. You know, Walsh said to God, people say this is a school, is that right? And he said, no, school is where you go to learn something you don't know. Your task is to remember what you already know. So I think this paragraph about learning, it says it's only going to take us so far. You know, it'll take us to the point, I think, where then we do remember.
I think it'll take us to the point where we realize that our ego as a guide has absolutely no value to us.
Yeah, it's a poor wizard.
It takes us to a point of accepting. That we are God consciousness.
Yes, it takes us to a point where we actually realize what we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like the word acceptance, but the one I like better is it takes us to a place where we realize
Well, or certainty.
that we are life itself, and that's it.
See, acceptance is necessary in my mind because what we refuse to accept, we push aside, we bury, and then we fear, and it gets worse and worse and worse. But acceptance does not mean acceptance as truth, because that includes a judgment. It just means acceptance of what seems to show up in our perception, turning it over, and then saying, I cannot discern what I am seeing as to what it is. Is it truth or illusion? And that's where the discernment comes in. And when we are to that point where we are in direct communication with God, there is no question of what's truth and what is illusion. Because that's coming from a place where only truth is dealing with truth. because only everything is dealing with everything. From the standpoint of all the timelines and all the illusions, the way I look at this is a standpoint from where every resurrection and resolution to every crucifixion in any dream has already been completed. All of the prodigal sons are home and have shared every experience of that crucifixion and have asked for the proper answer, so it was resolved as truth or illusion, meaning it was seen as illusion and it went away. So if a similar situation comes up in the mind of a healthy being in God, and even if that tiny mad idea comes up, the answer's with it right away. And then you can laugh at the same time you have the tiny mad idea. Unless you forget. But we won't, because we've taken the prodigal journey. Who will forget? Because the atonement principle is still there after we're through this. Our creations will go through it. Because they don't know they're the light until they experience what it means and what's valuable and what's not. It's a never-ending process, but not for each aspect of the mind. It becomes the whole thing. Then its existence would stop if it could not extend. That's why it has to be extended eternally. And in that, the light gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Of course, there's no more holy place in heaven or on earth where an ancient hatred became a present joining, and all the lights in heaven go brighter. Well, I'm slowing us down here. No, we're going to go now to page, where am I? We're going to go to page 15 and just read paragraph 2 only on page 15. Give us a little bit of an overview here from the very beginning of the course on what creation is, why we are here.
Does it start with child of God?
It does. This is the meaning of miracles and its distortions of miracle impulses. And yes, it does. It starts with child of God. You're there.
Yeah, I was
It did
there.
start with child of God.
Right.
You were there?
Yeah, I was just reading the chapter heading and the title heading of it.
15.
Distortions of the miracle principles.
Right.
Where do you want him to read?
Just paragraph 2.
Just paragraph 2.
That's
Child
it.
of God, you were created to create the good, the beautiful, and the holy. Do not forget this. The love of God, for a little while, must still be expressed through one body to another, because vision is still so dim. You can use your body best to help you enlarge your perception so you can achieve real vision of which the physical eye is incapable. Learning to do this is the body's only true usefulness.
So I asked, I guess at this point, because I wrote an answer down about creation, and the answer I got was, our purpose in creation is to extend God's love through holy relationships of perfect equality and joy. Anyway, for what that's worth. But this again is at the beginning, because it acknowledges our light is still too dim. It's an evolutionary process, as we just read on page 19. Let's go to we're going to go to the workbook on page 56, which is workbook lesson 37.
My holiness blesses the world.
That's it. You flipped right to it.
I did. It just happened.
That happens every once in a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Scott? We're going to read let's read the first 4 paragraphs. Go ahead.
My holiness blesses the world. This I do contains the first glimmerings of your true function in the world.
Scott? Oh, okay, yeah. Can you hold just a second?
Sure.
I wanna-
On the workbook. Okay, mine doesn't look like you're 57.
And Scott, when you read, and it's as it goes, especially toward the back of the room, could you read just a little louder? So
Sure.
Okay.
My holiness blesses the world. This idea contains the first glimmerings of your true function in the world, or why you are here. Your purpose is to see the world through your own holiness. Thus are you and the world blessed together. No one loses, nothing is taken away from anyone. Everyone gains through your holy vision. It signifies the end of sacrifice because it offers everyone his full due. And he is entitled to everything because it is his birthright as a son of God.
Go ahead, if you would, Roger.
There is no other way in which the idea of sacrifice can be removed from the world's thinking. Any other way of seeing will inevitably demand payment of someone or something. As a result, the perceiver will lose, nor will he have any idea why he is losing. Yet is his wholeness restored to his awareness through your vision. Your holiness blesses him by asking nothing of him. Those who see themselves as whole make no demands.
Mary?
Your holiness is the salvation of the world. It lets you teach the world that it is one with you, not by preaching to it, not by telling it anything, but merely by your quiet recognition that in your holiness are all things blessed along with you.
So I'm going to read that paragraph and just take the word holiness and change it to wholeness. Your wholeness is the salvation of the world. It lets you teach the world that it is one with you, not by preaching to it, not by telling it anything, but merely by your quiet recognition that in your wholeness are all things blessed along with you. And it's more meaningful to me that way. Mary Alice?
Today's 4 longer exercise periods, each to involve 3 to 5 minutes of practice, begin with a repetition of the idea for today, followed by a minute or so of looking about you as you apply the idea to whatever you see. My holiness blesses this chair. My holiness blesses that window. My holiness blesses this body. Then close your eyes and apply the idea to any person who occurs to you using his name and saying, my holiness blesses you.
So this is early in the workbook, and we were reading early in the text. So it's telling us that our holiness blesses these forms. And as Brian just read earlier about, for now, we have to do this body to body because our vision is still too dim. What this is doing to me is it's saying, I want you to take responsibility for everything in your dream. And by saying my holiness, if you say again, my
You should dance.
my holiness, meaning my wholeness, would even bless the baby elephant walk. Anyway, it's saying that I'm taking responsibility for everything because my wholeness, it is part of the wholeness. In other words, we're so fractured that we can't take responsibility for the whole dream because we think we're just a piece in the dream. What this does, it makes us take responsibility for it. When you bless it, can it be fearful? Not anymore. So you're taking it in and saying, okay, what this is really saying in code to me is we're going to get you to look at the whole dream as if you own it. And then we'll work with you.
And so until we get to the place where we don't exclude anything, you're really kind of stuck.
And that's where we can change everything by changing our mind, because everything's included within our mind, because we haven't said anything outside of the circle of atonement. So when we do change our mind totally, it's totally changed. Okay. Well, now let's go to let's do one more. Let's go to text 357.
You did a lot of research.
I do, yeah. And we're in chapter 17, forgiveness and the holy relationship, and we're down on the bottom of the page of 357.
The two pictures?
There you go. Thank you, Ted. That's it. The two pictures. And we're going to do, what are we going to do? Let's do paragraphs 1 through 4 here. Kat?
God established his relationship with you to make you happy, and nothing you do that does not share his purpose can be real. That's kind of the whole story, right?
What's that? Nothing you do.
There you go.
That
That's
does not
it.
share his purpose. Yeah, right.
The purpose God ascribed to anything is its only function. Because of his reason for creating his relationship with you, the function of relationships became forever to make happy. And nothing else. To fulfill this function, you relate to your creations as God to his. For nothing God created is apart from happiness, and nothing God created but would extend happiness as its creator did. Whatever does not fulfill this function cannot be real.
Whatever does not fulfill that function cannot be real. So that takes a lot of stuff out of the playing field.
So happiness is the whole show.
What we want for every seeming other
is happiness.
Is everything, and there is happiness.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
It's to deprive them of nothing, because, and seeing the face of Christ in my brother is seeing through you to the everything that's there, and that I want the you I see to represent that. I want the you that I see to be everything. And so my goal for you is that I see that in you. And that will be mirroring back to me if I can get to do that. So I have no other function but to want to see you happy. Or complete would be another way to put it.
The whole, right.
The whole.
It kind of
I
goes
see the
back
Christ
to-
in you.
Right.
That goes back to what we just read.
What's
In
that?
my go back to what we just read, in my wholeness.
Right.
Yes.
Take
Right.
that responsibility.
Exactly. Okay. Paragraph 2.
In this world, it is impossible to create, yet it is possible to make happy. I have said repeatedly that the Holy Spirit would not deprive you of your special relationships, but would transform them. And all that is meant by that is that he will restore to them the function given them by God. The function you have given them is clearly not to make happy, but the holy relationship shares God's purpose, rather than aiming to make a substitute for it. Every special relationship you have made is a substitute for God's will, and glorifies yours instead of his, because of the illusion that they are different.
Betty?
You have made very real relationships, even in this world. Yet you do not recognize them because you have raised their substitutes to such predominance that when truth calls to you, as it does constantly, you answer with a substitute. Every special relationship you have made has as its fundamental purpose the aim of occupying your mind so completely
that you will not hear the call of truth.
And what's the substitute? We make of it a special relationship. In other words, how does this affect me at all? Number one. And how is this going to affect me positively for my benefit? Number two. In other words, we're not, right from the beginning, if that's our mindset, we're not looking for the wholeness in them.
No.
We're looking in how this can make my ego advance in its own mind.
What am I going to get out of it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or I
Can
want
you-
to feel
how
more
you gonna
comfortable.
just
It's
feel
just
my
a
needs?
projection. It's just a projection. So we're not, because truth is spontaneous. It's absolutely present, and so it's just not being at all present.
Right.
Well, the purpose of it is separation.
Well, that's the purpose we're still holding on to.
Yeah.
When we had our talk about the split mind a couple of weeks ago, that's where I'm saying the Course is trying to reach through our egos to that split mind, which now, as we sit here and speak, is still choosing separation.
So the split mind says what's in it for me, and the awakened mind says what's in it for everyone.
That's nice.
Now, split mind actually goes beyond that. I think the split mind I liken to the soul, where it's saying, how is the prodigal son's journey progressing? Has the prodigal son still learned not to value things here? Does it need more lessons? It is setting up the script in essence. The ego is the reactionary thing. That the split mind has dissociated part of its mind to the ego and the body. This gets a little tricky because we operate through the ego on automatic pilot. We need to get through that automatic pilot to the decision maker. And that's why I say, okay, where's split mind? Where's my lesson here? Because I don't have to do this another 32,000 times. So, I'd like to learn it right now. What is my lesson? Because you've set this up for us. Because it benefits itself. Because it's like the masters that are moving forward in this idea of everything being everything and recognizing everything within everything and realizing the distinction between truth and illusion, which is simply, in my mind, the distinction between what is whole and what is not yet. Let's do the fourth paragraph, then we'll move on to another spot.
In a sense, the special relationship was the ego's answer to the creation of the Holy Spirit, who was God's answer to the separation. For although the ego did not understand what had been created, it was aware of threat. The whole defense system the ego evolved to protect the separation from the Holy Spirit was in response to the gift with which God blessed it, and by His blessing enabled it to be healed. This blessing holds within itself the truth about everything. And the truth is that the Holy Spirit is in close relationship with you, because in Him is your relationship with God restored to you. The relationship with Him has never been broken, because the Holy Spirit has not been separate from you, from anyone since the separation. And through Him have all your holy relationships been carefully preserved to serve God's purpose for you.
So the way I read this is the ego is saying, okay, you're saying we all ought to join because we're all one anyway. All right, here's what I'll do. I'll join with this one. And this will be special, and we'll keep the rest of the universe out. So I'm doing my part here. And what the Holy Spirit is saying is fine. Because I'll just make that a seed, and I'll take every special relationship you have and turn them into a holy relationship where you can see. But we don't need them all that way. We just need the one. If we truly do it, if we truly see one special relationship turned into a holy relationship, and we truly see the God in you as everything, Even if I can't see it in myself, oh my God, I see it. However it occurs, if there's a pillar of light or if there's just a mind feeling of, my God, you're complete. I can see it. I can see there's nothing wrong with you. You're totally, absolutely innocent, and the idea of past doesn't even exist because it's meaningless. It's always been meaningless because it's only my idea of the past anyway. But now, if it's mirrored back, we can have this holy relationship because it's two that left the story behind and they're out of the game for a brief split second. And it tells us, then we'll be more than glad to come back in, probably because it feels pretty good and probably because we know that my mind isn't totally clear yet because I still think the others are still in the dream and the dream's still going on. Any thoughts on these 4 paragraphs? Well, then let's go
I'm happy with it.
You're happy with it? Okay, then I'm happy with it. So let's go to the text, page 396. Just up the road a little bit. And this is still in the passing, or in the text. The chapter is the passing of the dream, and this last section here is called the 2 worlds. And let's do paragraphs 11 through 14.
Okay. This course will lead to knowledge, but knowledge itself is still beyond the scope of our curriculum. Nor is there any need for us to try to speak of what must forever lie beyond words. We need remember only that whoever attains the real world, beyond which learning cannot go, will go beyond it, but in a different way. Where learning ends, there God begins. For learning ends before him who is complete where he begins, and where there is no end. It is not for us to dwell on what cannot be attained. There is too much to learn. The readiness for knowledge still must be attained.
See, I love the way you read. It's loud and clear, and it'll be great on me trying to listen to this thing and learn some things from it. So what's this saying? It's saying that the learning is only within the dream. There is no learning in completion. There is no learning in heaven. There is no learning within wholeness dealing with another version of wholeness. The learning is all in the dream. But there is a need for learning in the dream. Tristan, do you want to do the next one?
Okay. Love is not learned. Its meaning lies within itself. And learning ends when you have recognized all is not. That is the interference. That is what needs to be undone. Love is not learned because there was a time in which you knew it not.
There never was a time.
Oh, never was. Sorry. Learning is useless in the presence of your Creator, whose acknowledgement of you and yours, of Him, so far transcend all learning that everything you learned is meaningless, replaced forever by the knowledge of love and its one meaning.
So this is when the prodigal son is home. Love is not learned. The meaning lies within itself, and learning ends when you have recognized all it is not. All it is not, in italics. It's what we talked about earlier. We're here to find out what's valuable and what's valueless. And we're here basically to find out everything in the dream is valueless.
Everything the ego values.
Everything the ego values. Now, again, we have to go back, except for what? Except for love expressed and received.
Okay.
That's all we take from it.
Okay. Your relationship with your brother has been uprooted from the world of shadows and its unholy purpose has been safely brought through the barriers of guilt, washed with forgiveness, and set shining and firmly rooted in the world of light. From there it calls to you to follow the course it took, lifted high above the darkness and gently placed before the gates of heaven. The holy instant in which you and your brother were united is but the messenger of love, sent from beyond forgiveness to remind you of all that lies beyond it. Yet it is through forgiveness that it will be remembered.
Linda, did you want to read?
Sure. And when the memory of God has come to you in the holy place of forgiveness, you will remember nothing else, and memory will be useless as learning, for your only purpose will be creating. Yet this you cannot know until every perception has been cleansed and purified and finally removed forever. Forgiveness removes only the untrue, lifting the shadow from the world and carrying it safe and sure within its gentleness to the bright world of new and clean perception. There is your purpose now, and it is there that peace awaits you.
I want to read Principle 50. You don't have to go to it; it's just very short. In chapter 1, the last principle. It says the miracle compares what you have made with creation, accepting what is in accord with it as true, and rejecting what is out of accord as false. And what would be in accord with it and true?
Love.
Forgiveness.
Love. Every loving thought we've had, or every loving thought anyone has had about it.
No, Linda, I'm trying to remember something that you brought up years ago. It went something like, when loving to learn is replaced by a purpose of learning to love, then we've reached the peace of God, something to that.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
You got it.
I think if you take that to the next step, it's learning that we are love, and we can do nothing else except be what we are. Well, let's go to the workbook on page 346. We might get through this today, if I don't slow us down.
We've been all over here.
And let's for these, I think we probably better read them through and then discuss them of the ones that I wanted to do, because I think we've got enough background in this so we understand what we're reading and why we're reading it and what the relevance is to everything else we've covered first.
That's important.
So we'll do 7 through 12, and we'll just read through them, and I guess I'll start with 7. Such is the teaching of the world. It is a phase of learning everyone who comes must go through. But the sooner he perceives on what it rests, how questionable are its premises, how doubtful its results, the sooner does he question its effects. Learning that stops with what the world would teach stops short of meaning. In its proper place, it serves but as a starting point from which another kind of learning can begin. A new perception can be gained, and all the arbitrary names the world bestows can be withdrawn as they are raised to doubt. Just really briefly, you see how we've progressed in this evolution? Mm-hmm. Now it's saying, okay, we're going beyond what we've talked about earlier. Okay.
Think not you made the world. Illusions, yes. But what is true in earth and heaven is beyond your naming. When you call upon a brother, It is to his body that you make appeal. His true identity is hidden from you by what you believe he really is. His body makes response to what you call him, for his mind consents to take the name you give him as his own. And thus his unity is twice denied, for you perceive him separate from you, and he accepts the separate name as his.
It would indeed be strange if you were asked to go beyond all symbols of the world, forgetting them forever, yet were asked to take a teaching function. You have need to use the symbols of the world a while, but be you not deceived by them as well. They do not stand for anything at all, and in your practicing, it is this thought that will release you from them. They become but means by which you can communicate in ways the world can understand, but which you recognize is not the unity where true communication can be found.
Okay.
Thus, what you need are intervals each day in which the learning of the world becomes a transitory phase, a prison house from which you go into the sunlight and forget the darkness. Here you understand the word, the name which God has given you, the one identity which all things share, the one acknowledgement of what is true. And then step back to darkness, not because you think it's real, but only to proclaim its unreality in terms which still have meaning in the world that darkness rules.
Use all the little names and symbols which delineate the world of darkness, yet accept them not as your reality. The Holy Spirit uses all of them, but he does not forget creation has one name, one meaning, and a single source, which unifies all things within itself. Use all the names the world bestows on them, but for convenience. Yet do not forget they share the name of God along with you.
God has no name, and yet his name becomes the final lesson that all things are one. And at this lesson does all learning end. All names are unified, all space is filled with truth's reflection. Every gap is closed and separation healed. The name of God is the inheritance he gave to those who chose the teaching of the world to take the place of heaven. In our practicing, our purpose is to let our minds accept what God has given as the answer to the pitiful inheritance you gave as fitting tribute to the Son he loves.
So what we're talking about here is, it's a transition. You're in it, you chose it, you're doing it. Now what's going on? We're teaching you what to value. And you're teaching yourself what you value, because it's our judgment on what we do value. When we go to a point of connecting with the Holy Spirit, which connects all of us, and we get to that level of, oh my God, I understand it. We are actually all one, and it's not fearful right now. It feels good. And then we come back into the darkness and we say, okay, not to use the symbols of the world to increase separation, but to teach that the separation isn't real. And by that teaching do we learn it until we're so convinced we don't even have to come back into it anymore. Because what we're really teaching is everything in our minds, in our own minds. And that's what is ultimately, that's why it says if you can forgive yourself. What we're saying is, I'm forgiving the entire dream within myself and recognizing it is a game. My God, I do this to myself. I really do. Who does it? Not the ego. And as long as I think I'm ego, no. But the split mind. If we can reach the split mind and say, from this perspective, I'm not sure I want to do this way anymore. I need some lifting of the veil. Which, by the way, is a transition to the next section. Which is text page 424.
Sorry, what was the page?
424. You throwing things at me?
No, like I had it. No. 424?
424. And this is in chapter 19, the attainment of peace. And the section is actually called the lifting of the veil. So we're going to do, and we're going to read through these again and then discuss them again. We're going to read 18 through 21. We're just going to read down that page.
Free your brother here as I freed you. Give him the self-same gift, nor look upon him with condemnation of any kind. See him as guiltless as I look on you, and overlook the sins he thinks he sees within himself. Offer your brother freedom and complete release from sin here in the garden of seeming agony and death. So will we prepare together the way unto the resurrection of God's Son, and let him rise again to glad remembrance of his Father, who knows no sin, no death, but only life eternal.
Together we will disappear into the presence beyond the veil, not to be lost but found, not to be seen but known. And knowing nothing in the plan God has established for salvation will be left undone. This is a journey's purpose, without which is a journey meaningless. Here is a peace of God, given to you eternally by him. Here is the rest and quiet that you seek, the reason for the journey from the beginning. Heaven is a gift you owe your brother, a debt of gratitude you offer to the Son of God, and thanks for what he is and what his Father created him to be.
Think carefully how you would look upon the giver of this gift, for as you look on him, so will the gift itself appear to be. As he is seen as either the giver of guilt or of salvation, so will this offering be seen and so received. The crucified give pain because they are in pain, but the redeemed give joy because they have been healed of pain. Everyone gives as he receives, but he must choose what will be that he receives, and he will recognize his choice by what he gives and what is given him. Nor is it given anything in hell or heaven to interfere with his decision.
You came this far because the journey was your choice, and no one undertakes to do what he believes is meaningless. What you had faith in still is faithful and watches over you in faith, so gentle yet so strong that it would lift you far beyond the veil and place the Son of God safely within the sure protection of his Father. Here is the only purpose that gives this world and the long journey through this world, whatever meaning lies in them. Beyond this, they are meaningless. You and your brothers stand together. Still without conviction, they have a purpose, yet it is given you to see this purpose in your holy friend and recognize it as your own.
Nor is it given anything in hell or heaven to interfere with this decision. What we project is mirrored back to us. If we project pain and crucifixion, we're going to see it. If we project joy, and that's all we want is joy and love, we will see it. So something in the recesses of our mind, if we see or feel pain, still needs to be healed.
We give what we get.
We do. Well, I think we can do this. Let's go to text page 653. And I think we have time. I'd just like to, to me, this is a summary. This is in chapter 31. This is the last chapter. The last page in the book is 669. So this thing's kind of taking us through this prodigal journey. And so let's just read right through this thing, and then I'll just have 2 short paragraphs after that. So
The real alternative?
the real alternative, we'll just read through this whole section.
Okay. There is a tendency to think the world can offer consolation and escape from problems that its purpose is to keep. Why should this be? Because it is a place where choice among illusions seems to be the only choice. And you are in control of outcomes of your choosing. Thus you think, within the narrow band from birth to death, a little time is given you to use for you alone, a time when everyone conflicts with you, but you can choose which road will lead you out of conflict and away from difficulties that concern you not. Yet they are your concern. How then can you escape from them by leaving them behind? What must go with you? You will take with you whatever road you choose to walk along.
Real choice is no illusion, but the world has none to offer. All its roads but lead to disappointment, nothing and death, nothingness and death. There is no choice in its alternatives. Seek not escape from problems here. The world was made that problems could not be escaped. Be not deceived by all the different names its roads are given. They have but one end, and each is but the means to gain that end. For it is here that all its roads will lead, however differently they seem to start, however differently they seem to go. Their end is certain, for there is no choice among them. All of them will lead to death. On some you travel gaily for a while before the bleakness enters, and on some the thorns are felt at once. The choice is not what will the ending be, but when it comes.
There is no choice where every end is sure. Perhaps you would prefer to try them all before you really learn they are but one. The roads this world can offer seem to be quite large in number, but the time must come when everyone begins to see how like they are to one another. Men have died on seeing this, because they saw no way except the pathways offered by the world, and learning they led nowhere, lost their hope. And yet this was the time they could have learned their greatest lesson. All must reach this point and go beyond it. It is true indeed, there is no choice at all within the world, but this is not the lesson in itself. The lesson has a purpose, and in this you come to understand what it is for.
Why would you seek to try another road, another person, or another place, when you have learned the way the lesson starts, but do not yet perceive what it is for? Its purpose is the answer to the search that all must undertake who still believe there is another answer to be found. Learn now, without despair, there is no hope of answer in the world, but do not judge the lesson that it is but begun with this. Seek not another signpost in the world that seems to point to still another road. No longer look for hope where there is none. Make fast your learning now, and understand you but waste time unless you go beyond what you have learned to what is yet to learn. For from this lowest point will learning lead to heights of happiness, in which you see the purpose of the lesson shining clear and perfectly within your learning grasp.
Who would be willing to be turned away from all the roadways of the world unless he understood their real futility? Is it not needful that he should begin with this to seek another way instead? For while he sees a choice where there is none, what power of decision can he use? For the great release of power must begin with learning where it really has a use. And what decision has power if it be applied in situations without choice?
The learning that the world can offer but one choice, no matter what its form may be, is the beginning of acceptance that there is a real alternative instead. To fight against this step is to defeat your purpose here. You did not come to find a road the world does not contain. The search for different pathways in the world is but the search of different forms of truth. And this would keep the truth from being reached.
Think not that happiness is ever found by following a road away from it. This makes no sense and cannot be the way. To you who seem to find this course to be too difficult to learn, let me repeat that to achieve a goal you must proceed in its direction, not away from it. And every road that leads the other way will not advance the purpose to be found. If this be difficult to understand, then is this course impossible to learn. But only then, for otherwise it is a simple teaching in the obvious.
There is a choice that you have the power to make when you have seen the real alternatives. Until that point is reached, you have no choice, and you can but decide how you would choose the better to deceive yourself again. This course attempts to teach no more than the power of decision cannot lie in choosing different forms of what is still the same illusion and the same mistake. All choices in the world depend on this. You choose between your brother and yourself, and you will gain as much as he will lose. And what you lose is what is given him. How utterly opposed to truth is this, when all the lesson's purpose is to teach that what your brother loses you have lost, and what he gains is what is given you.
He has not left his thoughts, but you forgot his presence and remembered not his love. Those are capital H's. No pathway in the world can lead to him, nor any worldly goal be one with his. What road in all the world will lead within, when every road was made to separate the journey from the purpose it must have, unless it be but futile wandering? All roads that lead away from what you are will lead you to confusion and despair. Yet has he never left his thoughts to die, without your source forever in themselves.
He has not left his thoughts. He could no more depart from them than they could keep him out. In unity with him do they abide, and in their oneness both are kept complete. There is no road that leads away from him. A journey from yourself does not exist. How foolish and insane it is to think that there could be a road with such a name. Where would it go? Where could it go? And how could you be made to travel on it, walking there without your own reality at one with you?
Forgive yourself your madness, and forget all senseless journeys and all goalless aims. They have no meaning. You cannot escape from what you are. For God is merciful and did not let his Son abandon him. For what he is, be thankful, for in that is your escape from badness and from death. Nowhere but where he is can you be found. There is no path that does not lead to him.
You cannot escape from what you are. I have viscerally been trying to do that. I have had a contentious desire to be separate from God. When it talks about the secret vows that we made, I can see me doing it. I could see me saying, well, yeah, but if I'm not special, then is it any fun? I don't have a problem with anything the Course tells me. I just have a problem with doing it. Any thoughts?
Exit.
I've just got two other paragraphs I want to read. I want to go all the way back to text page 154. And I'm just going to read these. It's on the chapters of Journey Back, and the section is the body as a means of communication. And the reason I want to do these two is because I think they kind of encapsulate the entire lesson we've done today. So I'm just going to read down. I'm going to start with paragraph 15 and just read the last two. Joy is unified purpose, and unified purpose is only God's. When yours is unified, it is His. Believe you can interfere with His purpose, and you need salvation. You have condemned yourself, but condemnation is not of God. Therefore, it is not true. No more are any of its seeming results. When you see a brother as a body, you are condemning him because you have condemned yourself. Yet if all condemnation is unreal, and it must be unreal since it is a form of attack, then it can have no results. Do not allow yourself to suffer from imagined results of what is not true. Free your mind from the belief that this is possible. In its complete impossibility lies your only hope for release. But what other hope would you want? Freedom from illusions lies only in not believing them. There is no attack, but there is unlimited communication and therefore unlimited power and wholeness. The power of wholeness is extension. Do not arrest your thought in this world, and you will open your mind to creation in God. I'm probably going to go back to those two paragraphs quite often from now on. They're gems that are hidden early in the text, in chapter 8. But they really sum up the whole thing.
The last sentence, do not arrest your thought in this world, is an interesting way of saying that you just don't want to go there.
To me, Jim, it says you don't want to stop there.
Yeah.
Because the mind must project. There's a spot in the Course where it says the mind must project or extend. So it either must project illusion or extend truth. It cannot do nothing and still be mind. So what it's saying to me is, you can do this, but when you extend, you're extending creation, because every thought you extend is love, to love, and it's mirrored back as love. But if you get into a world and you stop in it, you're no longer extending it. The only alternative is to be in an illusion. You can't stop extending the mind of God, because then God itself would stop being. There's a spot in the Course that says beingness must be extended. That's the only way it retains knowledge of itself. So let's just remember that there's a way out. Even if we can't remember the way out, there is one, and it's within us. And if I'm not really asking for it in sincerity, then I don't really want a way out. Any other thoughts? Or
when I read that, it's just, I even read it as the literal truth. It's a prison of the mind. It's like, arrest your thoughts there. We arrest ourselves. We arrest our own, because we are our minds. So we are our thought. So we literally don't arrest your thought in this world. Because when I've had a few, and one extremely extensive experience of that oneness where there is no world. It's just this I can't even describe it. I can't describe it. But there is no thing. There is no two. There's just complete light, complete all-engulfing light. And in an instant, it's just known that, oh my God, this name, this thing, all this drama. I just got off the phone with my sister and the whole drama. It's just a blip of, like a movie projection. And it's not real, and we're running around believing in it. And so I literally, it's like, don't arrest your thought in this world, and you will open your mind to creation and God. If we just don't arrest that, I'm here learning this. Still that goes to the background, and the suffering arises in the foreground again.
But we can have that glimpse.
We can have that glimpse, and it can help pull us back to it. I feel when we focus on it a lot, it's just having the space and time to really focus on it a lot.
So if we have more and more holy relationships, or periods of direct revelation, whatever we want to call them, then we come back to this world each time a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
A little bit less inclined to get wrapped up in the drama. And we can, I've asked for a lot of help lately, and I would like a partial lifting of the veil, because if I ask for the whole thing, I will burn out like a light bulb, and I know it. I can't handle the truth at this level. But when I ask for a partial lifting of the veil, I've received it. I've received just enough that I could comprehend.
Now
It's available to us.
You can go to Iona with me, and then that's where the veil is the closest. I mean, it's right there. I'm going to be there. I can say, "Leave, veil."
We wanted to be special, so I think we all have our own special veils.